we're back at it, folks, and we're going to hear from Margaret in regards to the Ag Innovation Board and some thoughts that she has in regards to that. And so welcome, Margaret. It's good to have you with us. And you give us your thoughts on that.
All right, I remembered to unmute myself. Good morning, and thank you all. My name is Margaret Lagus, and I just have a couple of quick things to mention this morning. Something was brought up to me by my client, BIO, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, and that is that in a couple of states, they are encouraging, through legislative action, farmers to switch over to renewable chemistries for plastics, so basically biodegradable plastics. We now have them. They're just coming out in farm grade. So they're a little more expensive, or they may be, they are more expensive than traditional plastics. But as a way of trying to encourage farmers to use them instead of, all of the plastics now that come from farms and end up in landfills, some states are trying to use some of the money that they're getting to encourage farmers to switch over to some of these new innovative chemistries. So that's just one. And I did talk to the agency. They had actually been thinking of trying to do something like that as well. So that might be something that the Ag Innovation Board could do, is to kind of look at that issue and make that part of their proposal when they report back to the legislature next year. And then the second thing is sunsetting the Seed Review Committee when this Innovation Board goes in, because the Innovation Board is going to be looking at all inputs and all aspects of agriculture and its both its positive and negative effects on the environment. We think that that's where the seed trade issue should lie. You're muted.
You mentioned other states. Do you have any knowledge of what they've been doing, or any?
I do,
of that?
and I will send that to the committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that wouldn't be part of the bill, though, would it? It would.
Well, it would be. It might be an additional charge for the Innovation Board. Would be to look at encouraging farmers to, you've already got a piece in there about plastic, and so I think this could just be another little tie on to that about renewable chemistries.
Okay. Yeah. I know we talked about that a little bit the other day when we were taking this bill up, and that is an issue that farmers are grappling with, and we need to do something along those lines of getting that under control without bankrupting anybody.
And it cuts across all agriculture. Dairy farmers cover their bunks with plastic. Vegetable farmers use it as weed control and for warming and stuff. So it's every single, and that's why the Innovation Board is great, because you've got all these different kinds of farmers that are going to be sitting there and can talk about, would these products work? Do they, don't they? That kind of thing. So I think that would be the right place for that conversation to happen.
Yeah. The Senator Colmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not a chemist. I don't pretend to be one. I don't think you are either, Margaret, but this is the first I've heard of it. So the hay bales that get wrapped in the white plastic, and as you say, I think it's usually black plastic that's put on the ground to, cover up the sun so that only certain things grow for you. You're actually able now, or they're actually able to have that biodegrade. That's amazing.
So years ago, you may remember that they came out with what they called a biodegradable plastic that was made with a form of corn. And the issue is that it needed sunlight and oxygen to biodegrade. And so in a landfill, that obviously doesn't happen. And so they could have biodegraded, but you would have needed kind of a special facility to kind of constantly turn them over. And now some of these new, they're basically made out of feedstock and biomass waste is what this new plastic is made out of. And so it breaks down a lot more easily in the traditional setting.
Now you mentioned it's more expensive too. Do you have any idea how much more expensive?
I honestly don't know exactly how much more expensive it is, but I'll try to get some pricing and send you guys. I just heard about this the other day, and so I'll try to get you kind of like a little white paper on it and tell you what other states are doing and maybe what, what kind of money we're talking about between the traditional 3 or 5 mil black plastic that dairy farmers use or the kind of plastic that vegetable farmers use as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, that would be helpful, and especially if we need to add language to promote the innovation board into looking into this. That would be good.
Yeah.
Other questions for Margaret? No. Let's see, Amanda, are you still with us? Yeah, there you are. Did you come on, Margaret, Amanda, to talk about what Margaret is dealing with the innovation board, or
Yes,
tell us about the high price of milk, how it's gone up so good, and
I'm
But
happy to
you're
talk about
welcome.
whatever you would like to, Senator Starr. I'm happy to be here. So whatever is appropriate.
Well, I don't know if we ought to start with how great the sugaring season has been or how good the milk prices are. But maybe we could get to something more positive and talk about the innovation board if you would.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for having us today. We're very excited to offer, well, first of all, for the record, my name is Amanda St. Pierre. I currently serve as the executive director to the Vermont Dairy Producer Alliance. I'm also a dairy farmer here in Berkshire with my family members, my husband, and my 2 sons who are signing on to our dairy this year, which is very exciting officially. They've been home for a couple years, and I've got 1 granddaughter and a grandson on the way. So we are continuing the generations here. We do maple, and that should be wrapping up this week, whether we like it or not. The frogs are chirping and the grass is greening up. So it's just time to move on to the next phase of dairy farming here. But today I was hoping to offer some testimony and enthusiasm for the Ag Innovation Board. And so I wanted to just speak to a few points and then open it up to any questions or discussion as anybody would see fit, if that's okay. So the Vermont Dairy Producers Alliance, we do support the Ag Innovation Board that was envisioned in the House Bill H434. We liked this bill because it did offer a broader perspective with more technical assistance across the industry, which, as Margaret had stated, could potentially incorporate the Seed Trait Committee, as many other advisory boards could also be put into this Ag Innovation Board. We like that it could increase the amount of the scope of the work that would be done by this board, and it would allow them to have more insight and be able to understand the complexity of what they're discussing. So we really liked that part of it. We support policy development in general based on practical and realistic applications and the pros and cons that would be introduced in this committee of pesticide use primarily and the use of alternative methods. We support a board that looks to develop well thought out policy and engages in many industries, not just dairy, that count on the use of new technology, new pesticides, new seeds that have been developed and researched. We feel that the Ag Innovation Board is the best place to do that in. Pesticides have a practical use, which leads to better water quality. We use it many times to help support our water quality practices. And we feel that dairy producers can offer valuable testimony on how and why it is used and the results we have seen. I think in general, we need to take a more expansive view and approach on ag practices and how that has changed over the years. We can't keep thinking like we did 20 years ago. We began dairy farming in 1986, and things that we're incorporating today, technologies and science advanced seeds and pesticides and land management practices are nothing that we even had a thought bubble on when we began dairy farming. We like this committee or board. We like the innovation board because it would allow the thought process to look ahead in the next 30 years, and we can see where we want to go as a Vermont ag leader. You know, what are we hoping to achieve? We want sustainability. We want diversity. We certainly want to be able to be competitive with the other states. And certainly we want to be a producer of foods for many generations to come. So this innovation board, I feel, would have the best way of handling these types of discussions. And I think it would save the committees such as yours and the House from jumping in and trying to create policy without such deep diving that really becomes necessary. I just think it leads to better legislation in the future. And it has so many more practical aspects to the businesses that actually use these technologies. For instance, in our dairy world, we have increased our efficiencies, which you have heard about a number of times. We've reduced our carbon footprints from the use of these technologies, which the Ag Innovation Board would consider. And we have created rich soils. You've heard Heather Darby from UVM Extension talk about our rich soils. And we've really done a great job on our water quality efforts, as the EPA report has shown. And this is just a small slice of, I think, what the Ag Innovation Board could be looking at and thinking, 30, 40, 50 years ahead. And where is science leading us? So we're excited about that potential, and we would support that board in that way. We like the streamline. We like it to be not so many advisory boards. We like it to be the one board with industry people on the board. We feel that industry people have a valuable voice. It supports our democracy. It allows you folks who have been elected to serve the greater community better because you have real facts, real statistics, and practical applications that are so necessary to produce strong legislation. So in closing, I would just like to thank the committee and for their thought process on this, and we would be open to more discussion on it, but we really support H434 in the way that it was written, and look forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
You're muted, Mr. Chair.
I have to keep the damn thing muted. The phone rings every 20 seconds, it seems like, and it interrupts the speaker in our proceedings. But anyways, thanks a lot, Amanda, for being with us and speaking to this issue. Where the House has passed that over to us, and so we're moving forward with the bill and trying to make it better if there's a way to improve it. Are there questions from any of the members? Brian?
Thanks, Bobby. So Amanda, considering your role with the Alliance, I'm just curious, when I look at the membership or the makeup of the board, and I think I mentioned this in another meeting that we had. Let me just open it up. There is a member of the farming community who practices organic agriculture, but there's also a member of the public representing the dairy industry. And I'm wondering what you might view as switching that around so it's a dairy farmer and not a member of the public representing the dairy industry. In other words, if you're going to have an organic farmer, to me, it seems only proper that you have a conventional.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Senator, distinction, because I absolutely agree with that change. I think I feel like there needs to be a balance, and every part of the industry, organic or conventional, serves a great purpose, and we belong together. And I don't like the division, because we are a dairy industry and they serve one sector of our consumers and we serve another. But yeah, I was kind of interested in why there was that that distinction in there, and that was a concern, and we would like that changed to include a conventional dairy farmer. But again, I don't like to put, like, I don't want to make a distinction between organic and conventional, but in this instance, with the scope this innovation board could cover, I think that there needs to be a distinction of that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Amanda?
Can I make one? I did find the states that have passed the bills on the renewable chemistries.
Yeah,
And so Iowa, Kentucky, Minnesota, and Nebraska passed them because it would benefit their corn producers, because corn is the feedstuffs that they use to make it. And then Maine recently passed one for their forestry industry because it would help use the pulpwood to make it. And so that's what, so those are the states that have passed it right now. So it's Iowa, Kentucky, Maine, Minnesota, and Nebraska. And Maryland is working on it right now as well.
oh, so there's quite a few then that are
Quite a-
coming along. The one in Maine, they would use pulpwood to make the cover, the plastic.
So it's basically, they use the biomass. Yeah, so they, when you chip the wood, they use that biomass to make it. Yeah.
I'll be darned. That's interesting.
Well, and we're desperate for market for pulp.
Maybe we could do that over at the power plant. There are all kinds of heat over there, and they're trying to figure out a way to utilize the heat from the Rygate plant. That
Right.
might be a possibility, right, Chris?
Sure, we've nudged them to find some co-locating entity. Margaret, what those states that you mentioned, have they mandated that that's what people use, or what has their law actually done?
No, what they did was, I haven't seen the actual language, but what they do is they encourage farmers, I believe through a financial incentive, to use these new forms of chemistries as opposed to the old ones. Because it's hard for a farmer to make that decision when you're not making much of a margin. There's not much of an incentive to buy a more expensive product.
Yeah. So, any other questions?
Well, I do have one for
Chris?
Amanda, if that's okay. Senator Collmore has been dogged about this distinction between how we're treating conventional dairy and organic farmers more broadly. But I guess I've wondered if, here we have, in my mind anyway, we have a bunch of dairy, a bunch of organic farmers in dairy and elsewhere. But then in conventional dairy, we have bunch of farmers, but also processors and ice cream. And, we have like the whole suite kind of the industry in a much bigger way than we do on the organic side. And I read this language to potentially say, maybe it's a processor, not a farmer. And I wonder if that matters. Maybe I just shouldn't worry about it, but it does strike me that it could make sense in conventional dairy to pull some of those voices in. Whereas it's not as much of an option on the organic side. Is that possible?
You could include both. You could have a dairy industry member and a dairy farmer. I think that this is the great thing of this innovation board, because you do want to consider all pieces of the industries that would use technologies for agriculture. We'll just call it that for now, be it pesticides, seeds, plastic, different types of plastics. But yeah, I think though, speaking as a dairy farmer, we are at the bottom of the chain where we're actually on the fields. Like, we are on the fields applying this technology, and we have to pay for it. We have to justify it. We have to prove that it does influence water quality in a positive way, or it doesn't. It's all on us really to make it work or not work. And so I think some of the frustration we've had in the past with maybe some older legislation is that things are passed without that practicality test. And the intent is always probably good, but when it comes to really applying it, it becomes very different than the intent. And then it becomes a problem to change it and effect change. So this innovation board, I think, could be a great clearinghouse to get us on a really good path. I'm very excited about the plastic discussion. And I think that could be similar to like, and I probably have we use it all the time, but like the efficiency of Vermont, you know, they could do some kind of rebates to farmers if they purchase it. And so I'm really excited to learn that, but that's just another great example of, you know, we don't hear it on the farm yet, right? We don't even know it's out there. So this innovation board could just really be a great place for this stuff too. And eventually, you know, you could, you know, 60-70% people using this type of plastic. Can you imagine what it does to our landfills? That's a lot.
And I don't know which version you've looked at, both Amanda and Margaret, but the one that we have, I believe, that came from the House has a panel at the, you know, a suggested panel of all different types of members that would meet and set things up to feed to the innovation board that would then make recommendations on the particular products.
So that's like the scientific advisory boards that then, you know, for those, for things that are much more specific, that then they would report to the innovation board, and then the innovation board makes a decision. Yeah.
Yes, whether it's workable or not workable, and do that. So I didn't know if you'd seen that version that came to us from the Ag Agency.
That came from the agency or came from the House?
Or, yeah, it came over from the House, yeah. But we could send you that copy as well, Amanda.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the right one, but it would be helpful if you did send the latest. That would be great.
Yeah,
I think there was just a suggestion of what should be, how the board should be reworked from the House's version. Bobby, so I don't know if it's language yet, but
well, it's in print.
yeah,
So, because we haven't worked on, you know, putting it together from the Senate's point of view yet, so.
yeah. I had concerns with that though when it came up because it said they could draw from these people. It didn't guarantee a spot for dairy farmers and other folks. And I think, you know, obviously Amanda makes a good point, you know, even on the House language, you know, we want the impact of someone whose feet are in a field on a regular basis and not necessarily in a corporate office on dairy. Not that there's an issue there, but they look at the world very differently.
Well, that's in the top group on the page where we're gonna, Senator Collmore has recommended some changes at the top of the page in the makeup of the full board, the big board, the one that makes the final decisions. And so you could have representation. What I'm getting at is you could have representation on the smaller groups that would be the two smaller groups that would work and come up with proposals to present to the innovation board, which Brian has suggested we make sure that there's a dairy farmer on there, but we need to talk about that and weigh that all out. Yep.
So just from Agrimark's perspective, we actually kind of liked the size and scope of the board as it came from the House. We prefer to have that wide variety of opinion actually making those final decisions. We do think that they will obviously need the help of other smaller groups. And so that we're happy to have, but we don't want that big board to basically be a mini pesticide advisory council. We don't care if it's, 14 members or 12 members or whatever, but we do think having a wide variety of agricultural producers on that board, along with, a crop consultant, a pesticide applicator, UVM extension, the people that are doing the research and the people that are actually out there, applying products and know what the new technology is. Precision agriculture is changing literally every single day, and with more satellites in the air, more farmers are able to take advantage of that. And so I think that this innovation board should have all of that expertise that actually sits there and helps make those decisions.
Yeah. And we talked about the health commissioner maybe should be there, or a designee from the health department,
Sure.
for health purposes.
Yeah.
One thing, if I
Sure.
could just add something real quick, sorry, is it appropriate at this time, Senator? Was on our dairy, we have incorporated a business advisor, and really what he does is he takes whatever idea we want to implement and breaks it into dollars and cents. And, and what are we hoping to achieve? And some things you can't quantify in dollars. You might have just a philosophy or something you want to pursue, but it gives you realistic numbers on what this proposed change would do. And I don't know what the title of such person would be, but I do think that as we propose changes and new things, we do need some kind of economic viewpoint. And I know I've been watching you guys on YouTube quite a bit this year. That's the positive thing of this COVID, is I can sit in Berkshire and be with you in Montpelier. And early on, you brought somebody from the Economic Development Committee in, and they did a great job. And I don't know, I guess I would like to brainstorm how that could benefit this innovation board and look at, the fiscal part of it as well.
Well, of course, we have a whole joint fiscal office that analyzes all types of bills and comes back and gives us an overview of, if you do this, it's going to cost this amount. If you do that, it would be this. And they're usually pretty darn good. They drill pretty deep, and they research the issue. I would expect they would be in a position either to be able to do this, or they certainly would know of someone that they could contract with that
Okay.
could do it.
Yep.
Occasionally they job some of these requests out to people that are specialized in a particular area. But a lot of times, like this school pension business that you probably all read about in the papers and seen on TV, they have a person that has been presenting to us that researched that at length. And I think, I don't know about the other members of the committee, but I felt that we got really pretty solid information from that individual that works right at the Joint Fiscal Office for us. I think they, handled that very well. And so, but that's a good suggestion for the committee, so we can look into that, Amanda.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Margaret or Amanda, or do you have anything that you would like to talk to us about? Any?
So, and I haven't deep dived in it, and I apologize, but we've had some people approach us concerned with nuisance trapping. And I haven't, and so I haven't really deep dived to see where that legislation went. I don't think it made crossover. But certainly, we would need to weigh in on that, as ag has, some beaver issues and different kinds of animals that we absolutely count on legalized trapping for. So I would just throw that out there, that's something that we would want to watch, and Heather's aware of it as well. But we have had some people approach us in our community, and I know Walt did down in where he is, concerned with that going forward. And as dairy farmers, we rely on that quite a bit.
Yeah, I haven't heard, I know there's a bill over in the House, but I haven't heard of anything on our side. I don't know if any of the other members have. I don't believe we have anyone on natural resources where that would go on our side. But I don't think we got a bill over either. I don't believe it did, that bill met crossover. So,
That's what I had heard, and I think it may be on the radar for next year. So,
well, I guess we'll want to stay awake and watch that. Anything else? If not, we have another witness, Nate, welcome and good to have you with us this morning. We're on 434 and you wanted to give some testimony in regards to that. And so welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Senator. Yes, my name is Nat Shambaugh. I'm a retired chemist with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, where I worked for 30 years on pesticide issues. And some of you may remember me from last year when I testified in your committee on S-180, the bill that you spent a lot of time on to revamp the Pesticide Advisory Council. So I want to talk a little bit about H434. I'm going to share my screen if I can. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
coming through very good.
Great, thanks. All right, so I'd like to talk about H434, the Ag Innovation Board. I think this is a wonderful idea. I agree with everything Margaret and Amanda said about the great things that this could do to help research, advocate, and incentivize innovative ag practices across the board. My concern is with how broad the mandate is for this committee, for this board. It's repealing the Pesticide Advisory Council and incorporating portions of their mandate into this board. And it seems like that's a really broad mandate that they're trying to give this board. Certainly, an innovative ag board should work to incorporate innovative pesticide and fertilizer management and all that sort of thing into agriculture. My problem is that Pesticide Advisory Council had a much more broad mandate than agriculture. It was supposed to work towards minimizing pesticide use across the board. The Ag Innovation Board has a appropriate membership, I think, for a board that is working to deal with innovative ag practices, but it doesn't have a broad enough representation on people with knowledge in pesticides, pesticide use, pesticide consequences, etc., environmental consequences. So I don't think that this board as designed could do a good job of dealing with these sorts of issues, which are in H434. This Ag Innovation Board would need to make recommendations on mosquito control permits, what pesticides are particularly hazardous and need extra regulation, and whether treated articles such as treated seeds have a deleterious effect on the environment. These are much broader than agriculture and require people with a different skill set than an innovative ag program would. Also, VPAC and the state have for decades had a goal of working towards an overall reduction in use of pesticides and hazards of pesticides, and that essentially has been removed when you're repealing VPAC. And I think that's a big mistake, because in this day and age when there's more and more concerns about the health or lack thereof of our waters. We need to have somebody some entity whose role is to work towards minimize pesticide use overall, not just new ideas for agriculture. So I've got two suggestions for you. The first and easiest one is to remove that portion of the language out of H 434. So do not repeal VPAC and do not give the AIB these statewide regulatory issues to deal with. Keep those in VPAC and next year have you all reintroduce your S180, which you spent a lot of time on last year, which didn't make it because of COVID, which would strengthen and revamp VPAC and make it even stronger and better at doing what it is supposed to do. So that's one concept. If you want to keep the pesticide issues in the Ag Innovation Board, then I think you need to consider substantial changes to the membership. So as I said, the Ag Innovation Board is set up to look at innovative ag. It's got a great representation on different ag industries and representation. There's nuances that can be talked about in there, but the concept is great. S180, which you worked on and passed last year, had great representation on pesticides, pesticide use, environmental impacts of pesticides, but not on innovative ag. So if you want to continue with the Ag Innovation Board as it is, then I think you need to strengthen the membership of the board by hybridizing these two membership lists. And this is my concept of what that would be. It would include the Secretary of Ag, Secretary of ANR, Commissioner of Health, or designees, just like VPAC and your S180. It would have representatives appointed by the governor, one doing commercial ag or crop consultancy, somebody representing environmental public health issues, and somebody representing organic farming practices, and then somebody with expertise in agronomy, plant pathology, entomology, or soil science, and the use of pesticides in one or more of those areas. UVM extension or somebody of that sort with expertise in use and environmental consequences of pesticides. The same ag industry people that are in the AIB, dairy, fruit and vegetable, and livestock. Somebody with broad knowledge of pollution issues from UVM, Gund Institute, or someplace else. And then somebody with expertise in integrated pest management. This gives a broad coverage of both ag representation for innovative ag issues and broad knowledge of pesticide issues that could do everything that you are asking the Ag Innovation Board to do currently. Okay,
Well,
any questions?
well, that's interesting, Nate. And if you have that material, did you send that to Linda, Nate?
No, I haven't yet. I just finished getting it together this morning, but I will send it out in a little while.
Yeah, that would be most helpful. Then we'll have it, in front of us to review and work on as we move forward. Yeah.
Yep, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, Chris?
Thanks, Nat. I'm struck. I guess I'm wondering about the stated mission of the VPAC versus what actually happened. I mean, we heard years ago they hadn't met for a while. So I seem to recall testimony that the board wasn't, or the council, I guess is what it is, wasn't actually doing a lot of the nitty gritty. Should we have this? Should we not? And that was effectively falling to staff. And so, because I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, but I'm wondering if in practice it is going to have, if we worry about it that much, or if there might be a way for us to just direct the department to sort of carry on the mission, which is, I believe we've heard, is effectively what's happening, that staff and the regulators are making the decisions, and the board, the council, is less aggressive about it as we might hope they were.
Yes,
I'm cloudy here, but I guess I'm wondering about practice versus theory, written words versus what they were actually doing, and is there a difference there that makes, maybe should inform us as we think about your comments?
Okay, so I agree completely that over the years, VPAC has not lived up to what its mandate says it should be doing. And I think from what I remember of S180 last year, I think that was what came out of your committee, was a push from you all to make sure that VPAC was actually doing what its mandate is. And so VPAC isn't as effective as it could be. It could do a lot of the things that that the agency has talked about for this AIB, as far as modernizing permit comments and bringing in outside experts for testimony, all those sorts of things VPAC could currently do, but they or the agency have chosen not to, and they have only, like you've heard before, essentially only worked on the few issues that Agency of Ag puts in front of them, which are the golf course permits, the railroad permits, a few other things like that, mosquito control. So VPAC certainly, if it were to continue, needs to be strengthened. And that's why I think if you could reintroduce S180 next year, if you're not going to abolish VPAC, that would be the way to go, or some variation on S180. I'm afraid that VPAC's mandate is to look at overall pesticide issues statewide, reduce pesticide use, look at risk of pesticides, and they haven't done that very well. This board would have infinitely more jobs to do, and it is even less likely to be able to do the pesticide work as well as it needs, in my mind.
You mean, are you talking about the new board or the BPAC board?
So-
About not or looking at a lot more stuff?
So the way the Agency of Ag has talked about the Ag Innovation Board, it would look at a lot more pesticide issues, but all of those VPAC currently can do. The agency has chosen not to task them with it. So,
So is it too broad or not broad enough? I mean, if we're going to create a new board, we certainly, I would think, want to look at the big picture, not just spots on the picture.
of course, and that's, so if you want to keep pesticide regulation in the AIB, then there needs to be a broader membership, like I said, with more representation of pesticide issues, and the representation on the Ag Innovation Board as proposed by the House is excellent for looking at innovative ag issues, but a major piece of the board is pesticide issues, and it's not represented well enough in my mind. But I'm not sure that if you're talking about Secretary Moore's proposal, or if you're talking about the House's proposal.
Well, I mean, Julie, Secretary Moore sent us her thoughts on the house's proposal. And we haven't really drilled down on that. We're just trying to put the pieces together and then come out with a plan. Senator Polina, do you have a question or?
Well, sort of a question, it's kind of a comment, really. I mean, I appreciate what's not saying. I think we've talked a little bit before about how the proposed innovation board doesn't necessarily focus enough on non-farm uses of pesticides. And it doesn't have anybody on the, at least last time I looked, that there was no representation of people who are expertise in the human health effects of pesticides. I think those are two important things. I think that I think it was this, at one point, maybe it was Secretary Moore, somebody sent us a list that had an innovation board with then some advisory committees, or the idea of having advisory committees to the board. I mean, one option, if we're just brainstorming, thinking out loud, I'm not proposing this, but you could have the pesticide advisory board, the S108 or whatever number that was, be an advisory board to this ag innovation board. And so that way, because I would really hate to see, I think the board sounds good and it would could do some good stuff. But I don't want us to lose sight of the issue around pesticides and the impacts of pesticides on human health particularly. I think that's really important. So I think there should be some way to integrate what we're talking about into the board. I'm just not sure about the best way to go about doing it.
Yeah, Julie sent where she suggested that we set up two groups to advise, to go through the material and advise the big board, their findings on the, from their group.
We
So,
still have to make sure that the pesticide, if we put an advisory group together or redo the pesticide advisory council, there's no magic. We have to make sure that it does its job. That's the thing. It just wasn't following through. So whatever we name it, wherever we put it, the main thing is to make sure it actually does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they do their work. I mean, yeah. They know all about that, trying to get people to do their jobs. It's unreal. But anyways, so any other questions for Nate? Well, if not, if you would make sure Linda can give you that information, or if you have it, Nate, send that down to Linda and then she'll get it to us.
I'll be glad to. Yep.
Okay, well, we appreciate that.
you very much.
Anything else from committee members? No?
No. No.
Well, we'll call it a morning and we'll get ready to do our other committees' work, I believe. Check out what's going on the floor, which I haven't looked at yet this morning, but it's either gonna be all of us or a few of us, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
So
brother.